$2.1 billion per airframe, and only 19 remain operational across the entire United States bomber fleet. This aircraft is irreplaceable, not because of stealth performance, but because no other platform carries the same strategic mission authority. Most assume the B-2 is a Cold War relic surviving on momentum, but the operational reality contradicts that assumption entirely. This documentary explains how a nuclear bomber became the only aircraft capable of destroying buried bunkers across contested airspace. The B-2 Spirit entered operational service in 1997, built under one of the most classified procurement programs in defense history. The Air Force originally required 132 airframes, but the Soviet collapse reduced that congressional authorization to 21. When $67 billion of development spending distributes across 21 units, each airframe absorbs the full institutional research burden. That arithmetic produced the $2 billion unit cost, driven not by exotic materials, but by catastrophic production volume compression. The airframe uses a pure flying wing with no vertical stabilizer, meaning every exterior surface contributes to radar signature reduction. Northrop pursued the flying wing concept since the 1940s, but material science and computing capacity finally converged in the 1980s. The aircraft skin uses layered radar-absorbing composites, converting electromagnetic energy into thermal dissipation rather than radar reflection. Every access panel and seam aligns to identical angular discipline, because a single misaligned component amplifies radar signature exponentially. The B-2 flies subsonic without defensive armament or evasive agility, meaning its entire survival depends on sustained electromagnetic invisibility. 4 F-118 turbofans sit buried inside the wing structure, with serpentine inlet ducts masking the compressor face from radar illumination. Exhaust channels flatten across the upper wing and mix hot gas with ambient air, suppressing both infrared and thermal detections simultaneously. The flying wing generates lift across the entire span without fuselage drag, producing superior efficiency at subsonic cruise speeds. Unrefueled combat radius exceeds 6,000 nautical miles, and a single aerial refueling extends reach to any coordinate on the planet. All 19 operational aircraft concentrate at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, meaning one installation sustains the entire penetrating bomber fleet. That concentration exists because the B-2 requires climate-controlled hangars to preserve stealth coatings that degrade under atmospheric exposure. The stealth coating represents the highest maintenance burden on the airframe, degrading from moisture and thermal cycling after every sortie. Each aircraft demands 120 maintenance hours per flight hour, and that ratio defines fleet-wide operational tempo constraints. Coating restoration alone requires extended curing periods, meaning a 30-hour sortie generates a maintenance window lasting 5 to 7 days. This represents the structural cost of stealth, where operational invisibility must be physically reconstructed through labor-intensive restoration cycles. Inside the cockpit, 2 pilots operate a fused avionics suite, combining navigation and targeting and terrain data into one display architecture. The APQ-181 maps terrain and acquires targets using low-intercept transmission without broadcasting detectable energy to adversaries. That radar has gone through multiple upgrades, with the current version featuring active electronically scanned array technology inside the original airframe. The weapons bays hold 40,000 pounds of ordnance, carrying 80 JDAMs or 16 B-61 nuclear weapons per sortie. One exclusive payload is the GBU-57, a 30,000-pound weapon designed to breach 200 feet of reinforced earth. No other aircraft carries the required combination of stealth, payload volume, and intercontinental range to deliver this weapon. The B-2 holds exclusive authority for deep penetration strike against underground targets, representing not a capability, but a strategic monopoly. If you want to understand the platform's defining strategic deterrence, subscribe to this channel for one system and one story per documentary. The specifications confirm stealth dominance, and the bunker-killing monopoly is documented, but neither reveals the institutional pressure underneath. The real narrative begins when 19 airframes must sustain combat readiness for 40 years against a design lifespan of 20. Annual fleet sustainment costs $4 billion across 19 aircraft, generating a burden exceeding $200 million per airframe annually. Projected lifecycle expenditure surpasses $100 billion, exceeding the total annual defense budget of most medium-scale nations. The dominant cost drivers are coating restoration, specialized inspection tooling, and restricted workforce training, not fuel or weapons procurement. Northrop Grumman operates dedicated facilities at Whiteman and at Plant 42 in Palmdale, where original airframe assembly occurred decades earlier. Replacement components for a 19-unit fleet cannot achieve volume efficiency, meaning every structural part is a custom classified fabrication. In 2008, one B-2 crashed on takeoff from Andersen Air Force Base in Guam, caused by moisture contamination inside air data sensors. That incident destroyed $1.4 billion of irreplaceable hardware, and the fleet permanently contracted from 20 airframes to 19. No replacement airframe was manufactured, and no production spare existed, meaning every fleet reduction translates into permanent capability contraction. This defines the core constraint. The aircraft is simultaneously too scarce to risk and too essential to remove from strategic rotation. Every modernization retrofit must cycle through a 19-unit fleet without excessive downtime, leaving almost zero margin for integration error. The Air Force has invested heavily in service life extension, adding new radar processing, computing upgrades, and defensive management systems. The core constraint persists. You cannot surge a fleet where every single airframe represents over 5% of total strategic capacity. The B-2 conducted its first combat operations during Operation Allied Force over Serbia in '99, flying non-stop from Missouri to the Balkans. 6 aircraft delivered over 600 precision munitions, less than 1% of sorties, but 11% of all ordnance expended. That disproportionate ratio between sorties and destructive output became the defining metric validating the B-2 investment across subsequent campaigns. In 2001, B-2s opened Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan, completing 44-hour missions with multiple aerial refueling contacts. During Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003, B-2s struck Baghdad command targets before Iraqi air defenses detected any inbound activity. In 2011, 3 B-2s hit Libyan airfields during Operation Odyssey Dawn, each engaging 45 aim points per pass. Every deployment confirmed the same pattern: intercontinental range, maximum payload, first night penetration, and zero adversary detection. Those campaigns tested the platform against legacy air defenses from the 70s and 80s. But today's threat environment is a different problem entirely. Advanced systems like the S-400 and HQ-9 use networked multi-frequency sensors, creating layered detection against low observable platforms. The B-2 was optimized for high-frequency fire control radars, and the flying wing reduces lower frequency signature, but with diminishing margins. This vulnerability means the B-2 needs electronic warfare support, because solo penetration against modern networks carries escalating risk. The Defensive Management System upgrade gives pilots real-time threat awareness, enabling navigation through gaps in adversary detection coverage. The philosophy is unchanged: avoid detection entirely, because the B-2 was built to prevent targeting, not defeat missiles. Effective gap navigation demands real-time connectivity and data link architecture that the original B-2 avionics never incorporated. Installing modern communications onto a stealth airframe without degrading performance is one of military aviation's most complex integration challenges. This is where the B-21 Raider enters the equation, designed from inception to deliver what the B-2 architecture could never structurally become. The B-21 prioritizes producibility over exclusivity, targeting 100 aircraft rather than the B-2's catastrophic 21. Target unit cost approaches $700 million, representing approximately 1/3 of the B-2's inflation-adjusted acquisition cost per platform. The architecture uses digital engineering and open modularity, enabling upgrades without the deep structural retrofits B-2 modernization demands. Next-generation stealth covers the full threat spectrum, optimized against low-frequency search radars and infrared tracking in addition to fire control systems. The B-21 completed its first flight in late 2023 and remains in testing, with operational capability projected for the late 20s. Until the B-21 reaches sufficient squadron density, the B-2 remains the sole American platform capable of the penetrating stealth bombardment mission. That means 19 aging airframes must hold combat certification for another decade, carrying a burden their production volume never anticipated. The B-2 was intended as one component of a larger stealth fleet, but procurement contraction forced it to become the entire penetration capability. Every restoration, sensor upgrade, and inspection becomes a race against degradation, keeping an aging fleet viable while its replacement scales. The B-2 functions not as an aircraft alone, but as a strategic constraint, shaping force structure and industrial priorities and basing decisions. It was engineered for electromagnetic invisibility, but its greatest vulnerability was never radar detection. It was production mathematics from the beginning. The B-2 validated that stealth bombardment works across intercontinental distances, proving the concept at the highest possible acquisition cost. The question is whether the B-21 can deliver equivalent capability at sustainable volume before the Ghost Fleet exhausts its service life. The B-21 Raider was built to replace the Irreplaceable, designed to deliver everything the B-2 proved necessary at the price it proved unsustainable.